When the first mass-produced commercial mascara hit US shelves in 1970, it was hailed as a revolution in beauty. The product, created by Maybelline and sold as cake mascara, offered American women the chance to darken and define their lashes with ease. But behind its seemingly glamorous invention lies a history that is neither innovative nor benign. One of the early ingredients used to create mascara pigment and binding agents was bat guano, which is the excrement or poop of bats, and it was prized at the time for its high nitrogen and phosphate content. In addition to its better known use in agriculture, guano was also used in cosmetics and explosives during the late 19th and early 20th century. The question is, where did that guano come from and who paid the cost of extraction? Let's talk a little bit about the Guano Islands Act and the U.S. imperialism. So in 1856, the United States passed the Guano Islands Act, which was a law that allowed U.S. citizens to reclaim any uninhabited islands containing guano deposits on behalf of the U.S. government. So over the following decades, American companies seized more than 70 islands, many in the Caribbean and Pacific, without treaties or compensation to local populations. And these included islands near Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Peru, and the Philippines. Though the law stated the islands must be uninhabited, many were in fact home to indigenous people or Afro-Caribbean populations. These communities were often displaced or forced into hard manual labor under extreme conditions to harvest guano for export to the U.S. and Europe. Laborers, many of whom were Black or indigenous, worked in toxic environments where the ammonia fumes from the guano burned skin and lungs. Reports from the era described grueling hours, lack of protective equipment, extreme heat, and frequent deaths from exposure or collapse. While guano's use in agriculture is widely documented, its application in cosmetics, particularly mascara, is less commonly known but still historically supported. So early formulations of mascara used carbon black and other pigment binding agents, including, natural nitrates and organic compounds found in guano. In beauty industry advertising from the early 1900s, ingredients were often romanticized as natural or mineral rich with no transparency around labor conditions. Bat guano, because of its rich pigment properties and organic binding quality, was a cheap and accessible additive in pre-synthetic mascara products, especially before chemical preservatives and colorants became widespread in the mid-20th century. Now let's talk about the racial politics of early beauty products. So while white women were the primary consumers and cultural focus of early mascara markets, Black women were excluded from both the product design and the industry's power structure. Ads from brands like Maybelline, Helena Rubinstein, and Max Factor reinforced Eurocentric beauty standards, portraying pale skin, thin noses, and long lashes as the epitome of femininity, which we know it's not. Meanwhile, Black beauty pioneers such as Annie Turbo Malone and Madam C.J. Walker had to develop entirely separate beauty businesses that catered to African American women, using limited access to ingredients and often sourcing products through informal supply chains. This exclusion was not just aesthetic, it was structural. Black women were barred from cosmetic research, funding, storefront visibility, and advertising partnerships, which still exist today. Even as Black communities innovated and purchased beauty products at high rates, the economic benefits rarely returned to our communities. Although guano was no longer used in mascaras, though modern formulations rely on carbon black, iron oxides, and synthetic polymers, guano mining still exists, primarily for agricultural fertilizers. So Peru remains one of the world's largest exporters of bat and seabird guano, and guano-rich islands are still worked by poor, often indigenous laborers who are exposed to toxic conditions. As recently as 2015, reports from Peruvian guano islands described workers living on sites for months, using makeshift tents, lacking running water, and suffering from respiratory illness due to constant exposure to ammonia-rich dust. The legacy of guano extraction reflects the same colonial structure that powered its economic use. cheap labor, extractive practices, and radicalized exploitation in the name of modern consumption. The history of mascara isn't just about beauty, it's about resource extraction, racial exclusion, and how the cosmetic industry was and is built on the backs of unseen black and brown laborers. While the use of bat guano in mascara may seem like a bizarre historical footnote, it reveals a deeper truth. The global beauty industry was never just about appearance. It was and often is still about control, commodification, and whose bodies are made invisible in the process. The conversation around clean beauty and ethical sourcing today must reckon with these historical truths. And as consumers push for transparency, it's critical to understand not just where ingredients come from, but who was harmed in their journey to the shelf.